The title of this evening's Dharma talk is Borrowed Elements. So what is being pointed out here is what you are, your body, speech, mind, this whole togetherness we call ourselves, our body, mind, elements, earth, water, fire, air, all of the elements come together to form this body, and then it is sustained by eating other living bodies. Even if it's carrots, it's still something that is alive. You can't live very long on eating rocks. I think you can eat dirt for a little while. At least 4-year-olds think you can. So what is being referred to here is that who you are, whatever you've been for the last 10, 15, 20, 30, or 45, 50 years is borrowed. Just a way of talking about it. This is not yours. You borrowed this. And you're going along and you try to keep it in good shape because you might want to trade it in. We'll see how that goes. So what's being emphasized quite often as human beings that we disregard is the fundamental state that we're in is impermanence. Things are not going to last. All compounded things, anything that comes together, whether it's a newly born baby or whether it is the food that a person 80 years old is eating, things that come together are going to come apart in some way. Maybe with great difficulty, maybe with complete relaxation and gentleness. It will not last. Nothing lasts. And this is one of the 3 marks of existence as the teachings of the Buddha, that everything is without a self, no solid self or identity, even though we keep trying to build up our flimsy identity, our discontinuous identity. So no self, no solid self, and whatever is there, consciousness is there, is dissatisfied. We're never really satisfied. If you get something, then we want something else. And if we get too much of something, we don't want that much. We want less, we want more. We want something else. Desire. We crave something else. And it's interesting that sometimes if we get the very thing we wanted, that's not exactly what we wanted. We wanted a blue one, not a red one. Or what we got is starting to go away or starting to disintegrate. Impermanence. So we're unhappy. And then the third one, of course, is all compounded things will vanish. Everything that is born goes down. So they're borrowed. Who's doing this borrowing? Who's borrowing these elements and that show up as the 6 sense fields? That shows up as form, feeling, perception, concepts or the thinking process, and consciousness, or the 6 sense fields and the objects that arise in them. Sound, smell, sight, taste, touch, thought patterns, etc. So it's kind of on loan, you could say. And the reason this image is used, at least the reason I'm using this, is to encourage you, to help you look more deeper into what you think you are, who you think you are. Look deeply and see if there's a solid, ongoing person here who is going to last. See if there's anything that's going to last. So how's that going? You looking? So this is why we, in this particular tradition, why we train our mind, so that we won't get snagged or caught by our errant energy of wanting something else, wanting to fulfill our desires, want to get something, want to go after something, the kind of materialistic outlook that the whole world is flooded with. I want a lot of that, but I don't want that. And we get caught up in that, caught up in that spinning situation, and then our emotions and our hopes and fears all get wound up in that, and we suffer. We might have some times when we're feeling pretty good, and maybe life is going pretty good, but nothing lasts. It doesn't last. So there's a teaching in Buddhism that I think is important at this point to point out, that who you actually are, you could say, the borrower of the elements, if you wanted to be very literal about that metaphor, who you actually are does not come into existence, that is not born. And what is, a way of saying it is, what is unborn is also unceasing. Just another way of talking about it. And you can't find that. If you try to find out what that is, you'll keep running into stuff, more and more phenomena. Am I this? Am I that? What am I? Who am I? What is this? What is going on? Unborn, unceasing, and the metaphor that's used quite often is with a nature like the sky. Well, unborn, unceasing. It's like nothing there. Just clouds coming and going. Coming and going, impermanence. Thoughts coming and going, impermanence. But we begin to get attached to those forms, those emotions, those feelings, those memories. We build up an identity. I'm the person who's thinking this. I'm the person who's feeling that. And we give ourselves a hard time, and anybody in our circle of friends, in our milieu, in our family, in our community, they have a hard time too in relating to us. We're having a hard time. And they have a hard time, or they might be trying to help us with our stop having a hard time, or they might lecture us, try to correct us. Something they do might be triggering something in us that makes us feel upset or irritated. Constantly going on. Wanting things to be different than they are. This is the basic teaching of the Buddha 2,500 years ago. The first thing that he said, as far as we know, who knows? I wasn't there for sure. Life is suffering, or discontent, or dissatisfaction. And the cause is, simply put, wanting things to be different. Wanting whatever's happening, not wanting that, wanting something else. You getting that down?
I am.
Good. What did I say?
Life is suffering. So the Buddha said life is suffering.
Yeah, Buddha said that.
And the cause is wanting things to be different than they are.
Yes, desire, craving, wishing for something else. And we're not saying this is wrong and you shouldn't do that necessarily. We're just saying, what is it about? Be aware of the way in which you're slightly discontent with everything. It eventually, if you look at that long enough, it eventually becomes a dissatisfaction that you have no idea what you even want. That's really irritating. Then you have to come and ask me, what do I want, Sokuzan? And I will say, I don't know, what do you think you want? So the metaphor, the idea there that the elements are borrowed is just a way to help us look at this situation, these fire, earth, water, air, just a way of talking about the elements. This compounded situation of being a human being, we get so attached to this, we actually begin to think that we are a physical form, that is who we are. You begin to find out how attached to that you may be. Please don't lay down. Thank you. You begin to, if I lay down to teach.
I'm sorry, I was just cracking my back.
You're what?
I was cracking my back real quick.
Oh, okay. Well, you can sit in a chair if that works.
Sorry.
You don't have to apologize. Just don't lay down. Thank you. So it's helpful to use that idea of looking at the body as impermanent. Actually, and then you could also, if you're a meditator, if you're sitting down, holding still, and you're watching the thoughts come and go, they're impermanent. The most horrible, difficult emotion that can come up caused by or triggered by something else or some other situation will not last. It's impermanent. But when it's happening, what? It feels like it's never gonna go away. Won't this ever stop? Like a bad cold. Won't this ever go away? Darn, what did I do to deserve this? We actually do that. We actually have these little commentaries. Well, you probably hugged the wrong person. You hugged a bad person, contaminated person. Don't do it. Just hug people who are healthy. Causes and conditions are untraceable. We can't find the first cause for anything. You can see something happen, you can see something else cause it, but you can't find what caused the cause, or what caused the cause to cause the cause. I can keep going, but it'll sound like a bunch of crows. Sitting practice and meditation is about taking this form that wants to be running around, moving, shifting, thinking, doing different things, calculating, trying to figure out how to get ahead, how to not fall behind, and holding it very still. Sit very symmetrically, hold very still, and watch everything that is asymmetrical. Very symmetrical. And observe the asymmetry of the thought patterns coming and going and liking and not liking. It's good, it's bad, it should be, it shouldn't be. On and on, it's just on and on and on. If you continue to watch that enough, your own insight into that will begin to become very clear about you can't find a solid, separate thing anywhere. It looks like that. Initially, it looks like there's lots of things, but eventually it's almost like your mind kind of, your vision or your sense fields kind of go out of focus and you just see this. It feels, to the ego, it feels like not knowing. But to the wisdom mind, it doesn't matter. The wisdom mind isn't looking for something else. It's the ego that's looking for something else. From the point of view of these teachings, you cannot experience perfection. You cannot experience enlightenment. You cannot experience realization or any of that, because it's not separate. You can only experience something that is separate from the experiencer. If the experiencer is experiencing this, there's separation going on, and it shows up more and more as warfare of some kind. Excuse me. You can't find what you're looking for. The famous Advaita, teacher of the last century, Papaji, would say, give up the search. I wouldn't say that. I would say, just notice that you're searching. Just notice that you're looking for something else. And I can say, there isn't anything else. But I'm not asking you to believe that. I'm just saying, you could use that. And you could turn it around and say, is there something else? Is there something to find? Is there something that's worth pursuing? Shut up.
What you just said reminds me of that quote from Rumi, the what you seek is seeking you. So if we can't find what we're looking for, what's looking for us?
Exactly. Exactly. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I like that. It's good closure. Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, no problem. And what this, what Rumi's, the quote that Rumi, not our little Rumi, but the ancient Rumi, although our little Rumi might say that at some point. What was it he said?
What you are seeking is seeking you.
What you're seeking is seeking you. This is just another way of saying that you're not separate from anything. What you're looking for is looking for you. And when you find what you're looking for, that will have found you. It's not separate. It's not separate. I'm not saying it's not separated, obviously. I'm over here having my ideas, thoughts, feelings, emotions, or whatever. You're over there having yours. There's definite separation. But fundamentally not separate. And that understanding, with that understanding, there aren't any more questions. There's just this. And even just this may show up with all kinds of bright colors and separations and divisions and everything, but there's no warfare anywhere. Wouldn't that be good? Wouldn't it be good to not have any warfare? Even if you're in the midst of people who are fighting, that you can't be snagged. Your clarity is so strong, your certainty that is not based on causes and conditions. You don't need any proof for this. I have no proof. I have no credential for getting up here. Yes, sir.
Is there a difference between that certainty you're talking about and stubbornness?
Yes.
Are we able to recognize that difference?
No. You can recognize the stubbornness in others. You've probably noticed that. Some people are just so stubborn. Yes.
Can we only recognize things in others that are just reflections of ourselves?
Exactly. More? Less? Yes.
When you talk about things not being separate, is there still a better and worse, like with warfare or no warfare? If they're not separate, is there still one that should be sought after and one that should be worked with?
Say a little more. I'm not clear on what you're asking.
I'm trying to understand, and just using that example of warfare and not being at war anymore, if the actual situation of no warfare is superior, like if there's a quality there that is not present within no warfare. And a little more context, I guess.
Thank you.
Talking about just like third turning teachings, that
Yes.
becomes confusing to me, the degree to which they talk about things not being separate, that sometimes I'm unclear about how far that goes or what precisely that means.
Goes all the way. The confusing part is that not seeing that the separations are not separate. the very separations that you're looking at all the time that we use to impute that there's somebody over here witnessing something over there. We may feel like we need to get away from our separative kind of mind and go into some kind of ideal kind of, you know, that kind of thing. Some kind of feeling of no separation. And that would be spiritual materialism. Yes?
Is no warfare then still just one point on the path?
Yeah.
What is ultimate no warfare?
Pardon me?
What is the ultimate situation with no warfare?
Ultimate no warfare is not separate. Warfare and no warfare not being separate. And how do you do that? You can see the warfare, but you can't see no warfare. If you see the warfare, that is no warfare. Because if you see the delusion, the Buddha saw the delusion, and this was his awakening.
I'm just wondering about what is the case, or what is the situation that arises where warfare and no warfare is beside the point? What is that revolution or that change where there can still be sanity regardless of whether there's war or not?
So what's the question then? I understand what you're saying.
What is the fundamental shift or change?
No position. Nothing's gained. There isn't anyone to gain anything. There isn't anything else. The else part is gone. The empty of other teachings are just that. Shentong. Everything is empty of its otherness. There's nothing but this. So it's empty of other. But it's not just something we conceptualize and think about. And it's something that's seen, and then you might have to back up into it and say, this seems to apply here. There isn't anything else but this. And that includes even the otherness. It doesn't leave anything out. So therefore, it isn't a philosophy. It's just the truth.
Until that occurs where there is no one, no experiencer.
Yes.
Is it important that we still work with losing the war?
It's important to just observe, just watch what happens. Just look. Just watch. No addition, no subtraction, no addition, no subtraction, no elaboration. It feels like don't know, don't want, don't need, don't object, don't agree, don't. It's a kind of a negative kind of approach, but it doesn't leave anything out, and it's not like you don't care. The caring and the consideration for the whole thing is even more powerful. Wisdom is empty, and love is full, and they're not separate.
I'm wondering about if there's a way to just stay with the initial situation.
No, because if you're staying with something, that implies that it could go away, or you could leave it, or it implies some kind of a basic separation that hasn't been seen through. Go ahead.
When we talk about the path, we often talk about ways to work with negativity, work with warfare,
Yes.
work with, but it sounds like you're saying that working with it doesn't lead to a point. So what is that action or that work that is occurring that doesn't actually lead to something else?
So the work that is involved there is just not making things worse. It's taking the very difficulty or confusion that is there and just observing it. Not adding on to it with your ideas, opinions, not coming up with bright ideas about anything, but just observing that. And then you may awaken, you may not.
Is there any actual progress on the path?
No. There is initially. First, when we first start, the Hinayana path is we make progress because we begin to realize that there actually is no solid self in the skandhas. There's no, even though there's form, feeling, perception, memory, and consciousness, that there's no solid being there. So that's kind of a startling thing, perhaps.
But would that be considered progress? And again, I'm thinking of what we talked about this morning about, there was that passage that said something about if you get a flash of bodhicitta and then you start to think that others are inferior, that you've seen something that they haven't. So I'm just wondering about what progress is if it's not separating yourself because you've seen or understood something somebody else has not.
But we need to start somewhere. So it might show up as that with different people, depending on the karma that comes together as your particular life, your mind, the way you're working with your feelings, your emotions, your particular karma. So one would continue, and it'll have its gradations. There's all kinds of explanations for this. There's the 5 paths, and there's the 10 bhumis, and there's just all kinds of things that lay that out. And you can use that if you need to, or you can just continue to sit down and stretch your awareness, and continue to look and look and look at the confusion. If you try to correct the confusion or fix it, then you're going to start to go in circles. It needs to be just observed. And that's difficult because the ego mind, the self-centered mind, could feel worse and worse and worse. It's like and the reason it feels worse is it knows that it's starting to look at its own funeral.
What does it mean to give somebody the benefit of the doubt who has a misunderstanding about what you're doing?
Just don't meddle with them. Don't meddle with someone's karma. Respect people's confusion, because in order for any person to transcend or become or work with samsara or the negativity of one's karma in a way that can be healthy, is you have to respect your confusion. So we start by respecting people's confusion. Otherwise, you can't help them, because then they'll disrespect themselves also more.
Thank you.
I know.
Yes. Tammy from Muskegon.
Yes.
She says, I think my thoughts were feeling this talk. It's exactly what I was swirling in my mind. I think my consciousness, what, quote, I am, end quote, is a mix of soul, spirit, constantly moving in this energy I'm using. Does that make sense?
Kind of.
And then a question from Don from Virginia. He asks, how do we uncover confusion without seeking?
Just look at the confusion. And don't necessarily add onto the looking, how am I doing? Am I seeing the confusion? Am I getting any better? Am I less confused? Am I more confused? Don't do anything with it. Just observe. It's very much like watching clouds in the sky. Interesting, sometimes fascinating, but none of your business. Treat your thoughts as if they're none of your business. Because if you believe your thoughts, you're going to spin, and I'm not condemning you to anything, but then you're actually fighting with the karma that needs to come into manifestation for you to have a realization of what this is. Don't fight your karma. Don't agree with it. Don't look away from it. Difficult. Andrew.
Is just observing anything like waiting for what is seeking you to find you?
It might have a feeling of waiting. It can get kind of monotonous if you're doing it correctly. I think it's kind of the feeling that people have doing a lot of sitting meditation is that it's the downside is that it's difficult or maybe irritating or something. But the upside is you're actually weaning yourself away from the need, the constant demand for some kind of entertainment, so some kind of need to be filled up with some kind of activity. So you're actually sitting and you're just watching the grasping, rejecting, you're watching passion, aggression, and ignorance happen in the mind stream without necessarily buying into any of it. Negativity arises, don't second the motion. Positivity arises, whatever it may be, don't second the motion. Don't do anything with it. Don't add, subtract, divide. Do no math at all. Sit down, hold still, and just observe. More? Junchu.
If anger comes up, I notice I have some little commentary in my head that says just see it or just feel it. Is that, how is that not just observing it?
Well, there's a little bit of a mini lecture going on. Something happens, and you tell yourself, just observe that. Or you say to yourself, well, that's just thoughts. Well, I don't have to believe that. And so there is a process as we practice, and eventually that kind of wears out. So you don't have to stop doing that. Just be aware that when something arises, you're aware of what arises, then you're aware that you just added something to it. You don't have to stop doing that. Just be aware that you do that. And then at some point, or points, that stops getting fuel because you're not seconding the motion. You're not adding on to it with further and further elaboration and commentary. If the body is very still without being rigid, it's much easier to see this activity of the mind, which leads to further confusion in our post-meditation or our everyday life. But on the cushion, seems to be possible to see deeply the way we keep fueling the original kind of chaos of the original disturbance, and different with each person. So there's no one kind of situation that fits everyone. More?
What does it look like to actually observe something without the internal instruction to observe it?
Yeah, good one. You'll be unconcerned with it. It'll be more like a cloud passing by. And this doesn't mean that you won't see that it's a very dark, threatening kind of cloud. So you won't miss that part, but you won't add on some kind of commentary on it necessarily. It'll have its own quality that you don't accept, reject, or turn away from. Go ahead.
If there's fear of that anger expressing itself.
Doing what?
Expressing itself.
Yes.
Does that mean it isn't being observed?
No, not necessarily. There's just more work to be done. In other words, more practice of just being alert and not particularly pushing or pulling, not doing anything, just being very alert to what's happening. And there's probably going to be some fear come up, but that can be included. That's just another thing to observe. That's coming up with that. And there's no guarantee. You may express that. Unlikely. If this is happening in sitting practice and meditation, unlikely that you're going to do much at all with it. Holding very still, sitting symmetrically, and just watch what arises. It comes and goes and comes and goes. Further questions? Yes.
From Tayo up in Traverse City. He asks, if there is no progress on the path, what happens when we continue on the path?
Well, you make more progress. That darn Tayo trips me up every time. I thought I could hide that part of it, but I couldn't. And what I'm saying here is the idea of latching on and tightening down on progress and making it some kind of an agenda about your path. That's the difficulty. I'm not saying there aren't some changes. Of course, anybody who's practiced for a few days, few years, a few months or whatever is going to notice some kind of a change in what's happening. Sometimes it shows up in different ways. So let me say it this way. If you were to start sitting, say you'd never sat before, you start sitting tomorrow, your first 6 months might be slowly and more feeling worse and worse and worse and worse. Is that progress? To me it is, because you're probably looking at the crap that you've been covering up for all this time. It's finally showing up. But it might happen in different ways. It might happen that way for 3 weeks and then suddenly start to brighten up and look pretty good, and then you start to get feeling pretty up. I've finally gotten through the difficult spots, and all of a sudden it just goes right in the tank again. This is why I don't talk about progress, even though it's all over the teachings. Part of the idea with progress is just to encourage people to practice, because those who have practiced this and have some realization on this path know that you have to support people doing this, and it's not easy. There's very little payoff from the point of view of ego or spiritual materialism to this. So it can be difficult, but I would say do it anyway. If you're going to live forever, I wouldn't even be in here. I just, well, about 300 or 400 years, we'll probably stop making a nuisance of ourselves to everything. It would kind of wear out. But since you're going to die either tomorrow or in 50 years or whatever it may be, and this very being that you're so attached to and enamored of, that you love and you love and hate, I guess I should say, is going to end. It's going to end. So this is kind of a preparation for that, along with working with our mind, our daily passion, aggression, and ignorance that causes us problems. So that sometimes that, if we were to use the word progress, yeah, there's something like that, but it's good not to focus on that because people have different ideas. One idea of progress is that you're going to feel better and better, but whose idea of progress is that you're going to feel worse and worse? That's also progress, because you could be uncovering the very mountain of tarantulas that you've been avoiding for the last 3 lifetimes. Any further questions? Hugh?
With emotions or a strong emotion that comes and goes, is that watching borrowed elements come and go?
Well, maybe a little bit, because it would be air quality of thought patterns coming and going, so a little bit of that. Have the whole construct, the whole matrix of this sensorium is all working together as a apparent living being with body, speech, mind, the 6 sense fields, sense of touch, sense of taste, sense of form, perception, and all of that. So something coming up, watching it come and go is basically your introduction. If you watch it and don't add to it, subtract from it, or judge it, or do anything with it, it's actually showing you a permanence. It's just like a thought. It's just like a living being being born and passing away. Don't do anything with them. More about that?
If we see an element of that, or no, I don't have a clear question.
All right. I like that. I don't have any answers, so phew, it worked out good.
Another question from Tayo. What is progress?
A lie. It's just relative truth. I'm sure there's progress. We make progress. We get stronger. We get wiser. We learn a language. We're making progress. Now we can speak fluent Portuguese, Hawaiian. You know, we're making progress. So, but it's relative. So since it's relative truth, it won't last. So it's not substantial, and it could end at any time. I mean, someone could learn and become fluent in a language, and then get run over by a truck. Is that progress? What happened to the progress there? Impermanence. Impermanence. It's not it's not nihilism. It's not negativity. It's just reality. It's just in the 1930s, millions and millions and millions of people were murdered by Stalin. They all had lives. They had futures. They had families. They, had all of them. They're gone because of one crazy person. You could read about that in what's that, Bloodlands? If you can stand it, it's very difficult to read. Causes and conditions we're very lucky to be in a room where there's no warfare going on. We're not, the Gestapo is not going to be rapping on the door, as far as we know. Hopefully, we're not thought to be a threat in this little town of cornflakes. Of course, probably that people don't know about us. So here we are. What are we doing? We're not doing much. We're saying, train your mind, find out who you are, rather than just make assumptions about who you are and go on and follow your passion, aggression, ignorance, materialistically, scientific materialism, cultural materialism, wanting something else, leading up to and including greed. Yes?
Often you tell us to not do anything unless we have to, and if we see something we might consider a bad trait, you tell us not to necessarily stop doing that, just to watch it.
Yes.
And at least from my experience, I see some things maybe change a little bit, like maybe not hooking up my vocal cords as much. Is there a byproduct of reconditioning that's part of the practice?
If I might understand what you're asking about, yes, we're kind of retraining ourselves to not jump the gun or not exclude things or judge things. So we're give it a little bit more time. It's called patience. Wait a little bit before we jump into something and clamp down or buy into something or reject something. Sometimes if somebody, I'm sure you've noticed, sometimes if somebody's acting in a way that's really negative that you think is a problem, or you think they're blaming you for something or doing something, sometimes if you just wait, you find out that it's not that at all. It's some other situation. It has nothing to do with you. It completely resolves itself, luckily, before you opened your big yap. Yes?
Do we fail to realize because we want to see things on our terms?
So that'd be a way of saying it, yeah. Got a couple of minutes if there's any of the new people have any questions. You have a question?
Yeah. How do you guys view disease and things like that?
View what?
Disease. Like my father was just diagnosed with Parkinson's.
Yeah. Well, nothing's going to last, and everything has different. Most of the people I know are already passed away. I still have a few friends here and there, mostly young people, but nothing lasts. And rather than looking at that as something wrong or something bad, it needs to be understood for what it is. Everything is impermanent. Everything is going down. It can be very sad to lose someone that you deeply care for and love and are attached to, But there's nothing incorrect about what's happening for your dad. And we view it as something that is going to happen, but also something that we can be supportive and spend time with your dad, and you know, tell him you love him and all of that. So probably doing that already. Yeah.
So, sorry, one more thing.
That's all right. You don't have to apologize. But
So suffering, what about suffering? Like, is that's not good or bad either?
no, it's just the truth. So it's not. It's just comes and goes. It looks like it, but usually it's there's different forms of that. But the important thing about that is to just look at it rather than trying to run away from it, which creates more tension. Try to run away or manipulate it or something like that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Certainly. Train your mind. Just spend some time. You don't have to be a Buddhist. Sit down, hold still, and watch what the mind is doing. And that way you begin to spend less and less time deceiving yourself. Pretty hard to deceive yourself if you're actually watching what your mind is doing moment by moment.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you for the question. Yes.
There's a question from on the live chat from Greg in the UK. He asks, is the rainbow light body dissolution of borrowed elements, is that a worthwhile goal?
Perhaps it is. Rainbow body is a teaching that comes out of the Tibetan tradition. Have a teacher, find a teacher that can help you with that particular. Different teachers have different ways of working with goal orientation, and a lot will depend on how they have how their understanding works with their teacher or the lineage, or so it varies. Yes, there's probably something to that. Be more direct about the question. There's something about the material world going up into light, because it's not really separate from light. This is just a really low vibration of light, in case you haven't noticed. I just discovered it myself 30 seconds ago. Yes.
A question from Amber in Muskegon.
Okay.
She asks, what are the three worlds? Are they impermanent also?
Yes, everything that you can point to is impermanent. Nothing lasts. It may last, granite may last millions of years, but nothing lasts. So the three worlds, whichever you're talking about, the past, present, and future, you're talking about the realm of desire, the formless realm, and the realm of form, all of them will not last. They'll run out of steam eventually, some just sooner than others. Yes, sir.
What should we do with anxiety?
Hold still, meditate, hold still, and watch the anxiety, and do it in short doses. If sitting still causes you to get more anxious, then sit down for 5 minutes, 8 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever you can do. But if the anxiety gets really intense, then stop, and then get up and move around, go look out the window, write a letter, have a cup of coffee or tea or something, relax a little bit, and then go back and then repeat. Go back, strike a bell. Don't do it with a smartphone. Not a good idea. The smartphone will take over your life. So just sit down, strike a water glass with a spoon, hold still, and if the anxiety starts to come up again, then stop, and then go and take a little break, and then just keep increasing that if you can. It might not increase right away. And if the anxiety is coming up in post-meditation, like when you're around a lot of people, then do it in small doses. Don't force yourself to overcome anxiety by pushing on it. Warfare never works. Always cooperate with the anxiety. Anxiety is there for, shall we say, a reason. Like, it's one way of saying it, but I would call it in this practice It is a dharma gate for you. The negativity that comes up is the very thing you need to look at, but you don't have to storm the castle walls. You can do it a little bit, take a little bit of dose of it, and then come back, take a little bit more, a little bit more. Do it that way. Is that helpful? Okay, very good. Okay, so thank you so much.
We'll stand and dedicate the merit in the back of our red champ books, and I'd like to remind everybody about the donation boxes in the hallway. We also accept donations online through PayPal. Also receive checks and debit and credit cards. Please help us in whatever way you can. Thank you.
May the merit of this penetrate into all places, so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. Jio San Shi Shifu Shi Son Bu Sa Moko Sa Moko Jaoromi. The 10 directions, the 3 worlds, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna Paramita. O Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions and the 3 times, please hear us. Please come down out of the light and protect Sokukoji Buddhist Temple Monastery, our Sangha, families, friends, and visitors. Heal everyone who is unhappy, sick, or suffering, and fill them with light.